ourselves that in the north of Nigeria, where there is Sharia law, you can be stoned to death for being homosexual. In the south, it's 14 years in prison, which looks relatively enlightened compared to the north. Do you support these countries having these laws?
Well, actually, these laws in Africa, in particular, come from the teachings. Most Africans in the sub-Saharan African attend church schools than state schools. And these church schools teach the children there and teach everybody what the Bible says about homosexuals.
And the Quran too.
Well, most Africans in the sub-Saharan African are Christians. We're talking about Africa now. I'll come back to the Quran after. I will not try to avoid this question. But talking about African now, so most people there go to church schools, and the Bible is very, very clear about it, regardless of what bishops try to say, the contrary of that. The Bible says if a man sleeps with a man like a woman, both should be put to death. Now, we teach this to children. It's advocate on Sundays. People are learning this all the time. And then when laws are passed to condemn these people, we say, why is that? So this a whole culture of condemning the gays that has come from years and years of education and beliefs, and then we want to now interfere at the end result of it. Right?
I think tolerance, understanding is urgently required.
Understanding?
So see, tolerance, understanding, why don't the gays have some tolerance and have regard for the society where, in Uganda in particular, 95% of the people there support the death sentence? Why don't we have tolerance from the minority to the majority?
So what do gays, what should gays do to tolerate that?
Well, they should
they tolerate their own murder, their own death, their own stoning?
How they tolerate it? They should have sensitivity towards what the society believes, and whatever they want to practice, it should be in absolute private.
But this is done in private. This is private.
No, it's in private. Nobody would know about it.
No, nonsense. This is private, and this is being done, as the gentleman here can tell you, against people doing this in their private lives. You know, we're not even talking about what somebody like describes as a public display.
It's not private anymore.
Well, we need draconian laws to be taken out of the system altogether. We have government, ministers, leaders who are not being acting as leaders, who need to change the constitution, and that's urgently required.
Why should the law, Mohammed, have any concern with what two adults loving each other who are not harming anyone else? Why should the law have any concern?
Well, in Islam, it's slightly different, right? Although we condemn the gays in Islam, like it does in Christianity, because the Bible and the Quran are originally from God, but in Islam, it's slightly different. If you do it privately, that nobody knows about it, because if people know about it, then it's not private anymore. You're not condemned. Well, I'm telling you, in Islam, if you do it so privately, then you will not be condemned. But once you announce it, once people know about it, you have to be punished.
Would you just put it this way around? Would either of you gentlemen sitting there be at all happy living your own life with your wives or whoever in entire secrecy, not being able to go out in public and tell anyone that you had a relationship with your wife, not being able to let any family know, living a life of secrecy like that, and the deal being that unless you kept this up throughout your life, you would be killed? Would you be happy with that life?
That's nonsense, because comparing...
It's what you're asking this
comparing a man and wife and comparing two male together is absolutely different. Because the society, the society that accepts that doesn't accept this. So this is the tolerance that have come, the sensitivity. You won't go to a place here in England and start condemning everybody, the democracy, etc. If you don't like it, get out of it.
Surely this is about universal human rights.
No, OK. I have to get back to the original point that I wanted to make, because Chris brought something up and it sort of sailed along and nobody zeroed in on it. One of my closest friends is Nigerian and happens to be gay. And one of the first things that I wanted to know was, why on earth does this attitude exist? Where does it come from? Was it the church? Was it the colonials? Was it more of, you know, white people going around the world telling people how they should behave? It was not about that at all. Historically, in the African culture, there has been a huge problem of homosexual rape. The attitudes, a lot of the attitudes, we think of our modern homosexual attitudes and people should be able to do this, that and the other. It is bred into the culture, fear of young men, young African men being raped by other African men. That's what and see, Chris is nodding because he knows he's been told the same thing. So that's what needs to be deconstructed. They need to understand, it would be, you know, what modern homosexual life is like. But right now, a lot of the feelings that they have come from a deep-rooted primeval fear of something that was systematically done to them.
And who would be, by the way, who would be best placed to conquer that fear, to educate people about that fear? Who would be better placed in Africa than the church? When you need church leadership, it isn't there.
Women are raped by, women are raped by men the world over.
Yes.
The issue about the role of the church, in Uganda, the Ugandan Anglican Church's history is that it started when a number of young princes in the King's Court in Uganda refused to submit to the King's homosexual advances. What happened to them? They were bound up in straw and they were burnt. And they're the Ugandan martyrs. And that's where they become Christian and they refuse to do this. And it was Christian teaching that was precisely the thing that said this should not happen. Now, in Nigeria, and I'm privileged to be a friend of the person you mentioned, the former Archbishop and the current Archbishop of Nigeria, the church in Nigeria actually was engaged in ameliorating the laws that were before.
So the Anglican Church in Nigeria has always been involved in seeing that homosexual people being punished, also being denied. The church deny our existence. The church say we are not part of them. And I think that what you people, you and your colleagues and other people would do is to stop using the government, stop promoting homophobia in Africa, because you say homosexuals need to change. And they didn't choose to be who they are. That's an abuse of homosexual nature.
Yeah, we'll get back to our question. Should we be doing more in the West to condemn this? And if not, why not? Is it because of that liberal cringe? We don't want to be accused of racism.
Well, every human has rights, which is the charity I support. And clearly the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is what everyone has to adopt and follow. The mechanism for controlling that are in question. A lot of countries do not sign up, ratify, and don't implement. I think those in the West have to apply pressure on African governments to conform, and change is absolutely required urgently, because people's lives have been transformed, changed, and people who are gay are being pushed to the far corners of our society. What we can't have is for people to...
Because I was very pleased, and I hope I'm not the only person in this room to feel the same. I was very pleased when I heard yesterday on the news that the two Malawians who went through an engagement ceremony and for that were sentenced to 14 years hard labour, have been pardoned.
Because of pressure from aid
agencies. And it's
agencies.
pressure from President Obama.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're the biggest aid giver to Malawi, but also America gives financial aid, and we have made a difference. Elton John, his AIDS Foundation, there was a letter in...
He wrote to the President, yeah.
He wrote to the President, yes.
And Madonna did her bit as well.
Yeah.
And the Church of Scotland.
So it's good, so we can have an influence, and we should.
The Church of England, yes, go on.
I just think this country is really good at pushing the nose into other people's affairs.
Is that what this is about?
Well, I think so. I mean, it's got a minority... You've got a minority who everybody's singing and shouting about, but the majority in Africa, they don't want it. And it's their law, right? I'm talking at the moment, and I'll give you your chance, right? What about Dubai?
You just read this morning that in Uganda, 95% of the population agrees with the death sentence for gays. So that's not from Muslims or from the white people. That is the 95% of the population.
Sophie Bukhari, clearly you're a religious man. You think this is a sin, but you don't think it's a crime.
It's a diversion. I mean, look, Africa's got some real big issues. AIDS, wars, famine, water resources. There's some real big issues. And by focusing on the gay community and saying, let's punish these people, it just diverts everybody's attention onto a futile debate.
If we're addressing this, they can send a special rapporteur to each and every one of these African countries.
Is he right, though, that 95% of people want these laws?
Yes, the special rapporteur can go in there. They're there to determine the health check of every nation. They can write reports that can find its way to the General Assembly, that can force government to comply, and we can see real change.
In any case, I really wouldn't try to sort out...
Thank you all very much for your contributions. And you can join in that debate by logging on to bbc.co.uk, The Big Questions / The Big Questions, and follow the link to our